Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I'm Annette Densham from Publicity Genie, and I'm going to go through really quickly, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, insider secrets to get $1,001 in free publicity. So this is all about how you can use the media to expose your business. So let's get started. I'd like to welcome you all here today. I know there's lots of people from lots of different businesses. So this is, a fairly generic type of webinar, but I'd like to hope that you would get some great ideas about the wonderful stories that you have in your business. So there's a worksheet attached so that you can write down your thoughts and observations, and, if I blow your mind, make note of that too. And you can use this to go on and create hopefully a magnificent PR plan. So I'm going to show you how to rock it like a superhero. So, PR is not as difficult as what you may think it is, and it really should be a critical part of your overall marketing plan. If you're not using it, then we'll talk about a few reasons why. Now, I really want to let you in on a bit of a secret, but there really is no secret to doing PR. It's really just about developing some skills, practicing them, using them, and then going back and rinsing and repeat. Now, I don't mean to diminish what I do, but once you know how to get your messages out there, you can continue to do it over and over and over again. And I'm a really big one for teaching people how to fish. So once you know how you can catch your own food, then you can feed yourself forever. And the same goes with marketing and PR. Once you know how to use the strategies, then you can continue to use this over and over and over again. Now, before we get into it, I don't know if you're like me, but I often go to webinars and I'm sitting there going, all right, there's going to be a pitch at the end. She's going to try and sell us something with massive dollars. And yeah, okay, I'm going to sell you something. But this is really just as an introduction to what I do in Insider Secrets to Free Publicity, the new rules of PR. So I'm doing a tour of, sounds very impressive, doesn't it? I'm doing a tour of Melbourne, Sydney and Brisbane in October. It's a one-day workshop. Brisbane's really exciting for those who are in Brisbane, because I've got great media contacts here, and I've managed to convince 3 local journalists from radio, from magazine and from a newspaper to come and be a special guest after the lunch session. I got tickets for those for $150. I'll send you the links after. If you're keen, please come along. It's $99. For those of you on the webinar today, it's $75. So there you go. I've got the business stuff out of the way. Just tell you a little bit about myself, just so you know that I actually know what I'm talking about and I didn't make this up in the bath last night. I have a background in print journalism. I started at a very young age of 15, so only last week. If you're laughing, that I really appreciate that. I've worked for The Australian. I ran a column in there for over 12 months called The Innovators. I've written computer stories, stories about sport, stories about history, you name it. I like to think of myself as a specialist generalist. I've also written for the Fin Review. I wrote for the senior newspaper for almost 7 years, and it was just one of the most amazing jobs I've ever had, and the Sunday Telegraph and the Daily Telegraph. And my background in print journalism wasn't, I wasn't the front page journo, I wasn't the political journo. I was just a generalist writer. But what I did learn was that how to go out and find great stories so that people kept reading what I wrote. And it was a little harder for me because, back in the day when I was working in journalism, there wasn't the internet, there certainly wasn't Facebook, and you had to hop on the phone or actually go and see someone. There's a concept, to go and see someone to get a story. Now, I'm not saying being a political journalist is easy, but the stories come to them because the politicians want them to know. So the key to that is there's journalists out there looking for your stories, and if you can make it easy for them, then they'll love you forever. Now, I jumped to the other side of the fence about 5 or 6 years ago when I started working in corporate communications. So I've had my feet in both camps. So I've worked as a journalist and I've worked in communications, internal communications, which is communicating with the staff about what's going on in the organisation, and media relations, where it was my job to share our achievements and the things that were going on in our business with the media. And that was a lot of fun. I'd like to stop and take a moment because I think it's really important to remember why we're in business. So I'm a small business person too, so it's just me. I get help from VAs, but generally the magic starts and ends with me. And sometimes that can be a little overwhelming because if you don't have a plan, then it makes it really hard to know where you're going. So if you wanted to go to Melbourne and you didn't look at a map and you just started driving north, it may take you a little while to get there. So if you know why and what you're doing, it certainly makes life a lot easier. So stop and think about why. Why did you go into business? If you're like me, I was made redundant from my job. Well, I wasn't made redundant because I'm still here, but my role was made redundant. And I had been headhunted for this corporate communications management role. It was so exciting. I'd been out of the workforce for 10 years with my kids, and I'd slowly worked my way back up and got this fantastic role. And a year later, it was gone. And I was beside myself. Campbell Newman had just wiped out over 400 corporate communication jobs in the government, so the market was flush with really awesome people. And I just didn't think that I had any value until I went to a weekend with the magnificent Stephen Esser, who made me realise that I have an expertise that can help people, and the same as you. So think about, why did you go into business? What gets you up in the morning, and why do you keep going despite obstacles, and what helps you celebrate your success? Now, it could be you wanted to be your own boss. I definitely know that's a big one for me because I think now that I'm almost unemployable. I don't think that anyone would want me to go back into their workplace. I've certainly got used to running my own race and planning my own day. Mind you though, I have clients, so I do have bosses, but it's a little easier to negotiate. Maybe you wanted a little bit more time, so you wanted to have that lifestyle. And one of the things that I've learnt in the last 2 years is that you've really got to work at having that balance. And did you do this because you wanted to work on your business, not in your business? And you're finding that you're constantly working in your business, playing catch up, trying to get the admin done, trying to get the financials done, trying to do your marketing, trying to service your clients. It can be a big mountain of stuff to do. And part of this webinar is helping you realise just how important marketing and PR is, and why you really, really need to be spending time, dedicating time at least a couple of times a month or a couple of times a fortnight on working on your business, on generating goodwill, on building relationships, on connecting with people, not just clients, but people who can refer you, people who can help you, people who can mentor you, because it certainly makes it a lot easy. And this is one of my favourite sayings, is nothing it seems went according to plan. Who are we kidding? There was never a plan. Is that you? Are you sitting there going, oh, I've tried this, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that, I've done this. But what have you actually consistently done? What have you persisted with? Because marketing and PR, the results come from what I call persistence, consistence, and having resistance. Because, you're going to get some no's. It happens. Like if you think about when you're a little kid, you got more no's than you got yeses. Well, it doesn't change when you become an adult, and we need to build a thick skin because journalists are going to say no to you. But if you have a plan and you know where you're going month after month after month, then it doesn't matter if someone says no to you, because you know that next month you've got something bigger and better. So today I'm going to serve up to you on a silver platter, certainly not an apple, although that's a good idea because good health is certainly very important to running a business. But I'm going to serve up for you how you can get focus in your marketing and your PR, how you can get more leads and sales, because after all, why are we in business? At the end of the day, it's to earn an income and to get more bang for your buck. So you may have spent a bucket load on advertising or Facebook ads and you're not seeing any results. So PR is a really great way to minimise that out-of-pocket expense and to get like massive return on your investment for very little spend. I reckon that sounds pretty cool. So it's time to jump into the detail. Are you ready? Have you got your worksheets ready to go? Because I really want you to focus on what the biggest secret for you is. Now remember, I told you there really is no secret, because it's just about consistency, hard work and having a plan. So, it was a secret. The secret is that it is no secret. Okay, so PR is not just about spin, tall tales, celebrity antics or bad behaviour. Now, you could be forgiven for thinking that's what it is because, as a PR person, I'd probably rank up there with journalists and used car salesmen in terms of trust and reliability. But PR is all about public relations. Focus on the relations part of the word. Relations. It's about building connections and relationships with the people who need to hear about what you're doing. Yeah, of course it's about spin. You can come to me with a story and I'll find a way to spin it to make it really good or to get attention. But public relations is evolving and changing. It is about being authentic. Now that's becoming a bit cliche, that word, authentic, but it's about being real. It's about being you. It's not about pretending that you're something that you're not. It's about focusing on what your story is, why you're in business, why you do what you do, and communicating that with people who need to know about you. Now, I'd like to think that PR is about powerful relationships. So what can it do for you? It can attract attention. If you get your story in the local newspaper, people are going to see that. Like I had my story in the local newspaper years ago for a dragon boat club that I started, and I got heaps of media around it because I knew the power of using PR. And I still get stopped at the local supermarket with people who talk about what I did for the community in building that dragon boat club. Now we got heaps of members through that. Now it didn't raise any money for me, but it just goes to show that PR can be used for just about any message. So when you're spreading your message, think of using the media. It's also a really great way to leverage your content. So if you're blogging or if you're creating infographics or if you're on LinkedIn, you've got Facebook posts, there is a way that you can use the content that you create for a media release in 5 or 6 different ways. And if you're someone who'd like to be famous, and I'm not talking rock star famous, unless of course that's your thing, but I'm talking famous in your industry, famous in your niche, so that when a journalist is looking for an expert, that they come to you because they know that you're reliable and they know that you've got really good information. And what about reaching more people? Now, right now you've got a little circle of influence. Imagine magnifying that by 3, 5, 10 times. Now, of course, that depends on the type of media you use. So if you got on the Sunrise program, then, hey, that's 1 million people. If your message is purely for your local area and you reach 30,000 people, then that's a lot more than perhaps you would have reached with just a flyer drop. People tend to throw those away. And it's low cost. You don't have to spend a lot of money on doing PR. It does cost you some time, but it's time worth spent. So PR is, as I said, powerful relationships. It's about connecting with journalists. It's about connecting with your clients. It's about connecting with your prospective clients. And it's about connecting with people in general. So maybe you're a psychologist and you have a message about, one of the people who are doing my Get It Done program is Lindsay Spencer Matthews. He's a psychologist and he's written a book called Why Clever People Do Dumb Things. And I highly recommend it, not just because Lindsay's my client, because when you read it, you're going to have some head slap moments and go, oh my God, that's why I do that. So his book's about changing the way you think about the way you think, about the habits that you have and why you do things a certain way. Now, he can build powerful relationships, not just with the local media who are looking for an expert like him, but imagine the number of people that he can help by promoting his book and his message. Now, they may never ever speak to Lindsay. They may never ever read his book, but they may see an article in a newspaper or a magazine that triggers for them, oh my goodness, I need some help with my life, and they go and get some help. So it can be incredibly powerful, the messages that you share, because you have the ability with the stories that are in your business to engage, to be able to take people on a journey, because you think about why you read stories or why you go to the movies or pick up a magazine or follow a Facebook post or, click on that, yucky clickbait and you're going, oh my God, I shouldn't do this, is because we all want to connect emotionally with other people in our community. And you can do that with the stories in your business. And a little bit later on, I'm going to share with you 5 different ways that you can come up with stories so that when you finish this webinar and you can go with 5 stories, that's 5 months worth of media stories or blogs or any type of content that you wish to create which will help solve a problem for somebody. So PR is also about third-party credibility. It is something that you can't buy. It is something that, you can't just go and pick up at the supermarket. It's something that comes from someone else saying how good you are. And when someone sees you on TV, hears you on radio, reads you in a magazine, or sees a testimonial about the work that you've done for them, is that they think, oh my goodness, the media, who understands what I'm looking for, has sought out this person for their opinion and has published it. You can't pay a journalist to do that. They've got to think your story's pretty good for them to actually engage with you, interview you, take your photo, whatever that looks like, whatever media it is, and share that with their audience. Journalists have, for whatever you think of them, most of them believe in the importance of what they're doing and sharing facts and information. And now there's so many different platforms that you can use that you can get your message out. So third-party credibility, can't pay for that. If you get it, it's gold. Use it, leverage it, share it with everybody that you know. Okay, so you're on this webinar for a reason. So maybe you've tried PR before and it didn't work for you. I don't know. Hopefully we can have a chat after and see what it is and it is for you and how maybe I can help you. But why aren't you using it? Or why aren't you continuing to use it if you already have? So there's a few reasons. So you may think that it's only for big business. You don't know how. You think it's too hard. A lot of businesses think that they're actually too boring and the media will not be interested. You may just not even realise that it's a tool you can use, or you're really focused on using advertising. You've got your Facebook campaign lined up, it's bringing people in. But what I want to do is be able to open your mind how you can, maybe diminish the spend on advertising and ramp that up with PR and media stories. Now, I've got nothing against advertising. I think that it's a very useful tool. But for me, advertising is always about you're talking about you. And, that's really easy to do. Who's really easy to talk about? Ourselves. We know us, we know what we think. But when you focus on advertising, and unless you're a huge brand that is well known, stands out, advertising is a hard slog, because if you're not known, you have to be repetitive with your advertising. That reticular activating center in the back of your head, when you see an ad over and over and over again, think about why you go and buy some things. When you go to the supermarket, why is it that you buy Kellogg's over the generic brand? Because they've advertised, they've planted a seed in your brain. But they're a big brand, they've got lots of money. So for you who may not have a big budget, is that if you can supplement some of your advertising with PR, is that there'll be a little bit more in the pocket for you. That's always a good thing. Okay, so the 5 secrets to prosper from PR. The first one is, and this is what I discovered 2 years ago when I did Stephen S.'s workshop, is that secret is you are the expert. And what that means is that you have skin in the game. Your business is your baby. You created it from scratch. You know your products inside out. You know why you started your business. And the journalist wants to hear from you. They don't want to hear from me. I'm the middleman. You know, I'm the slick salesman in the middle who's trying to get them to buy into the story. But just think about this. A journalist rings me. I'm working for you. You've engaged me as your PR consultant. The journalist rings me and says, you know, hey Annette, I'd really like to talk a little bit more about Kathy's story. Do you know why she is doing this? Yeah, hopefully I do, but let's say I don't. It's like, oh, no, John, actually I don't. Can I get back to you? So I have to chase Kathy down, then I have to get back to the journalist. I've lost stories doing that. But when the journalist calls you after you've sent them a media release, you are the person on the spot. You can answer the questions then or there, because what a journalist is looking for is great content, great stories, and someone who can be responsive. So you are the expert and they want to hear from you. You are the magic in your business. You just know the ins and outs and everything that is required. And you've got really great stories. And you may not realise it right now, but by the end of this webinar you will, is that you have so much knowledge, so much content brimming inside of you. Great case studies, great testimonials, you know, great tips on how to help people with your content. Is there are people out there who really want that information. So part of this process is helping you pull that out and create those stories. And it comes back again to that little bit at the back of your head, the reticular activating center, is once you know how to find great stories, is that you will always be looking for them. You will always find them. Something will happen, you'll read something, you go, I know exactly how to change that. And part of being the expert is understanding the formula. So like it's really simple. Get a story idea, write a media release, send it to the journalist, and then you're a media darling. Now, okay, there's a few steps in between there, and I don't mean to make it sound so simple that, you know, I do myself out of a job, but you can learn all of these skills. Writing a media release is not that complicated. There is a formula that you can use. Sending a story to a journalist, you have Google. It is so easy to find journalist details. They want to be found. You can join up to any number of media contact distribution lists, or you can ask me. I'm certainly happy to help you. So here's just an example of one of the experts that I've worked with. So Helen Abbott is a coach and is also an author of a book called Beyond Pregnancy Loss. Now, she has some really powerful messages, and she wrote the book, you know, a couple of years ago and hadn't really shared it around. So what we did is we actually newsjacked a story which had appeared on the project the night before, and we sent this story out because it was relevant. It was being discussed a lot. There had been a couple of high-profile women, families who had miscarried, and she had this really powerful message. So I was able to connect her with the journalist who wanted to talk to her. She had interviews on ABC in Newcastle. Oh my goodness, it was meant to be a 3-minute interview. It went into 10 minutes with talkback. Do you know, like if you had to pay for that, that would be tens of thousands of dollars. She got in Kids on the Coast and had a number of other articles published in local papers. But here's the kicker, is that a specialist in New York saw and heard what Helen was doing and contacted her and asked her if she'd like to partner with him on a special project. Now that's pretty cool. That's credibility. And she did the whole of her interview sitting in her cupboard with her boots because she was freaking out. So I coached her through that, and she did the most amazing interview and got really good leverage and really good interaction with the people who rang up. So secret number 2, your stories are needed and wanted. You know, us Australians are very humble people. We're really not big on big noting ourselves, you know, for whatever reasons. Fear of rejection, you know, you don't want to look stupid. You don't want to big note yourself, and you don't want to raise attention to yourself. But the people, I've sat with so many small business owners who kind of like, oh, you know what? Look, I'm just an accountant. I really don't have anything of value to say. Or, you know, oh, I'm just a life coach. There's really not much that, you know, I could think that people or journalists would want to hear. Or, you know, you work in real estate and it's like, well, you know, everybody does the same thing. But that's not true. You have got a gold mine of stories. But how to find those stories? You have to start thinking like a journalist. Stop thinking like a business owner, because when you say, I have nothing to share, you're thinking like a business owner. You're thinking like someone who's very humble. And being humble is fine. But I'm a great believer that if you want to build your business and you're not sharing your expertise and your magic, it's almost selfish. Because there are people out there who can benefit from what you know and what you do, but they just don't know who you are. They don't even know you exist. Can you imagine what the power of getting into a newspaper or a radio program? You know, like there's some ripper radio programs out there. You know, just I'm based in Brisbane, so here it's like 4BC, the Claire Baker Show in the afternoon, Kelly Higgins Divine on ABC, Spencer Howson in the morning. ABC Radio is a magnificent platform for sharing your stories and content. They're not always going to take what you have to say, but it's about building a relationship with those journalists. They'll let you know what they want. So how do you start to think like a journalist? You've got to get to know the news. So when you're working out your plan, work out who is your audience. Really important to know who your client avatar is. What are they reading? Now, I have many people who come to me and go, you know, look, I want to be famous and I'd like to do it in 6 weeks. And it's like, all right, that's not going to happen. But anyway, and I want to be on the Today Show. Okay, well, that takes a little bit of time unless, you know, you've got something that's relevant and just spot on for right now. It does take a little bit of engagement. But think about this. If your client avatar is men over 50 who are into trucks and bikes, do you think that they're watching the Today Show? So if you're on the Today Show, yeah, fantastic. You can go, I've been on the Today Show. That's amazing. But if your avatar's not watching that show, your message is wasted. It's like standing on top of a mountain shouting out to Brisbane how awesome you are. No one's going to hear you because you're on top of the mountain. But if you get to know the news that your client avatar is reading, so they might be reading, you know, bus and coach. Maybe that's where your story needs to go. So it may not be, you know, as glittery and as awesome as being on a national TV program. But this is all about getting a return on your investment. This is all about hitting your target and getting your message to the right people. So how do you get to know the news? Go read the publications, listen to the programs that you want to be part of, you know, connect with your journalists on Twitter, connect with them on Facebook, go find them, read their stuff, get to know who they are, start building a relationship with them. That's all about knowing your target. So when you contact a journalist, then you know exactly what they're looking for, you know what they write about, you know who their audience is, and you can open your pitch with, you know, hey Frank, you know, I really enjoyed your article in Bus and Coach on, you know, gearboxes for the latest Mercedes-Benz buses. You know, I've been doing some work with this particular area and, you know, I've got a few, you know, whatever that is. I'm making that up as I go along. I know nothing about buses. I know a lot about forklifts because I did write about forklifts for 12 months. Nothing about buses. But you get the idea, is that that person knows that you've taken the time to get to know what they do and get to know what it is that they like and what they need. That way you can tailor your pitch. It's spot on, it's right in the pocket, and that journalist will appreciate that because you've done the work. You've not just done this scattergun approach of finding 100 media contacts, crossing your fingers and hoping someone picks it up. Now, if you have an approach like that, it really makes it hard for you to connect, to follow up, and to engage. So secret number 3, PR is a funnel filler. You know, it's not just about getting in the media. It's about using your coverage to make more money, to get more customers, you know, to create joint venture partnerships. You know, how about more people subscribing to your newsletter or clicking on your discovery call box, or being seen as the expert so you're asked to speak at events, Chamber of Commerce, networking events, so you can keep building that fan base. And it's about building trust, because people don't do business with a business, they do business with people. You know, one thing that I've learned is people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And you can use PR to do all of these things. And the foundation of it is building those relationships to fill your funnel. This is an example of a client who did just that, is that she knew that, you know, she's a personal trainer, and, you know, like, how many personal trainers are there out there? So she did something a little bit different. So she created this 12-week challenge. So this is before everybody was doing 12-week challenges. And she negotiated with Who magazine on doing a feature. So you can see there on the screen the 2 girls who took part in that. A Current Affairs saw it, were interested, followed along. Now, her target market is women, you know, 30 plus, you know, typically around 40, who've decided at 40, oh my God, I'm heading into middle age, things are starting to spread, I need to do something a little different here. So A Current Affair was spot on for her, and so was Who. That's who her target market are reading, that's who they're listening to. So can you imagine what happened to her business after that? Her credibility soared. She got more sales, more clients. That can happen for you, and she didn't have to pay for anything. If you think about what a 3-minute segment is worth on A Current Affair, you know, it's something like $50,000 for 30 seconds. So over $100,000 in free publicity. So when you go back to the title of what this webinar is how to get $1,001 in free publicity. If you secure some magazine articles, a TV segment, a radio interview, throughout the course of the year, you could have created over $1 million worth of advertising for free. Now, you know, I don't know if you're like me, I don't know where that $1 million would be coming from. If I had to pay for it, I'd probably have to sell a kidney, and I kind of like my kidneys. So how much easier is that to do than having to come up with $1 million? Heaps easy. But I want you to also look past the media for impact, is that once you create the media release, is that you can then leverage that content and use it across multiple platforms. You can tweet it, you can Facebook it, you can go onto Canva and create beautiful little images with quotes. You can use Periscope. You know, if you could take that media release and do a news show every week on your business and start building. You could use it as podcast material. You can use it in your email newsletters. You can use it on any platform that you're currently subscribed to spread that message far and wide. The media is fantastic, but what happens if you don't get a media hit that month is that you still want to use the work that you've put in. So leverage it. Secret number 4, size does not matter. PR is not just for the big boys. So for those companies that have got, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars directed towards their marketing campaign, you can use it too. It is perfect for any size business. You can be a home-based business. You can be a small business like me and home-based. You can be medium-sized. You can be a big business. Once you know how to create your plan, how to roll it out and find those stories, is that you've just got just as much power as the big boys when it comes to sharing the news, especially if you know who your target is and you know what media you want to be featured in. Because if you can tick the journalist boxes, it's a great story, it appeals to their audience, and you're easy to work with, winner, winner, chicken dinner. You've got to understand the game though, is that if you can understand deadlines, you can understand what creates good content, you understand how to format a media release, you understand how to engage with the journalist, is that you can create magic, because they just love a good story. If you with me long enough and you're talking to me about, you will hear me go, oh my God, that's an amazing story. And I get this look from people who go, really? And you go, yes. I can think of 4 or 5 different media outlets that you could pitch that to, because journalists are keen, they're hungry for good news stories. Let me tell you why. In the past couple of years, most of our major newspapers and radio have had massive redundancies. They're scaling back. I don't know how much longer newspapers will be around, but most of them, if you'll notice, are moving online and they're being digital. They're strapped for time. The newsrooms are not the bustling, crazy place that it was 20 years ago. Is that there are fewer people doing the job of 2 or 3 people. So if you can deliver to them in their lap a story that ticks all the boxes, you are just on a winning chart. You will just blow their minds and they will love you. Maybe not forever, but they'll definitely love you. So secret number 5 is do-it-yourself PR is doable. And I know you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, Annette, you're crazy. I am one person. I have to do my own BAS. I have to do my own spreadsheets. I've got to do my own admin. I answer my emails. Then I've got to service my clients. I've got to do my Facebook ads. I've got to do this. I've got to do that. Is that you can incorporate PR into what you're currently doing. It really does not take a lot of time. Once you've sat down and you've planned, and it'd be really interesting to do a study to see how many small business actually have a marketing plan. And I don't know if you're aware of this. If you're in Queensland, the state government has just released a grant for $5,000 to help you build your marketing plan. So you can use 2.5 to engage a marketing PR expert. Happy to help. And how much easier would that make it? So I know I keep harping on about the plan, but to do your own PR, if you've got that plan, you know what you're doing, you know where you're going, it's really simple to slot that in to your working week. Now I say, 2 to 4 hours a month on your PR will get incredible results. I do want you to understand though that there's no such thing as an overnight success, and I'm sure you do. You're a smart bunch. But it can be really frustrating to send a media release out month after month and not get any traction. Look, and it still happens to me. I get incredibly disappointed, but I shake it off because, go back to the beginning, PR is about building powerful relationships. Is a journalist wants to see that you're not just a one-hit wonder, that you're going to keep creating good content. Now, I've had journalists come back to me. I received an email this week. I sent a pitch for a client, oh crikey, 2.5 months ago, and I followed up, didn't get any love, so just kind of I forgot about it. And I received an email yesterday from this journalist who said, hey, I'm looking for someone for this story. Can you help me? Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to ask twice. You don't need an agency. You don't need me. Maybe you need me to help you, show you how to incorporate this into your marketing strategy, but you don't need me to be your PR consultant. You don't need me to be selling the stories in for you. Is that you can learn how to do that. Because I tell you, if you wanted to engage me, it's a minimum of $1,600 a month retainer. And I can't even guarantee you results. I can guarantee you that I'll work damn hard for you, but I can't guarantee you results. Now, if you don't have that much money to spend, then you need to learn how to do it yourself. Because remember, 2 to 4 hours a month and you can be getting some really good traction. So here's a really fine example. Now this was a client who came to me a couple of months ago, Sonia. She may be on the webinar. She said she was going to, but I hope you don't mind me talking about you, Sonia. Is that something really big happened in Ipswich a couple of years ago, and they changed the laws about investment property and granny flats. Now Sonia's business is called Ipswich Granny Flats, and she came to me and she went, look, I'd really like to be able to promote this. And I went, all right then, you need to write down your goals. So she wasn't too keen on me making her write down her goals, but she did it. And by doing that process and by creating a plan, we landed a story on a current affair within, I think we sent out the media release on Friday. By Monday, we had a phone call from a current affair. So one media release. Now that's not always going to happen, but if you've got a really good story, it may happen to you a couple of times a year. And just think about your return on investment. A current affair goes out to 1 million people. 1 million people watch it. You know, it costs $50,000 per 30 seconds. Sonia had a 3-minute story. So that one media release not just returned for her numerous phone calls, but it also saw her nominated for awards, articles in the local paper, articles in property magazines. She got a really good return on her investment. I think we generated something like almost $500,000 in publicity within the space of a month. Really powerful. Now she's going to be launching in another area, and we're going to do it again. We're going to duplicate it because we have a plan. We know what to do. We know what journalists are looking for in terms of good story ideas. So part of what we did was with each publication and each program is that we slightly twisted it. So for the property magazines, we went purely investment. But for a current affair, we used human interest. So you can see the lady in this photo here. This is Kath, and this is who Sonia was building the granny flat for. So it was a really lovely story about Kath and Jim. They live together, you know, not as partners, but as friends. They're getting older. They don't want to go into a retirement home. So this for them was the next best option. They still had their own homes. They're still really close to help each other. A current affair, loved it. So PR for you is a powerful mix of tools. So when you add that into your marketing toolkit and you include that, then it can make, excuse my dog, then you can make a huge impact. But you've got to understand what makes news. So it comes back to what makes a good story. So let's run through this really quickly. So human interest is probably the most powerful PR story that you can come up with. So you want to connect with people's emotions. You know, what is it that you do that makes a difference in people's lives? What is it that you do that solves problems? So like, you know, if you walk away from here with only one story, I want you to brainstorm exactly what problems it is that you solve and how that is a solution for your clients. So what about current trends and what's going on in your industry? You know, what are the recent stats in your industry and how does that impact your avatar? Key calendar events. So we're coming up to Father's Day. We've got Christmas coming up. We've got Halloween coming up. We've got New Year's. So New Year's, my goodness, the plethora of stories that you can use if you're a coach. You know, how can you better plan for a more magnificent 2016? You know, what mistakes did you make in 2015 and how can you learn from those? You know, Christmas, you know, just think about what happens at Christmas. People overeat, people have family issues, you know, big massive fights. Children are looking for, you know, more and more expensive gifts. So you could write an article on, you know, how to have Christmas without spending a fortune. Lots of different stories that you can come up with for Christmas. Useful advice. You know, if you look at the growth of how to and 5 tips to do this and 7 steps to do that, is people are looking for easily digestible content on how to make their life easier. So you come back to the problems that you're solving. What useful advice can you create around that? So I know it's not Christmas, but I'd like to give you a gift. And it's really easy to get stuck because you want to create some stories but you're not quite sure how. So after the webinar, I'll be sending you my cheat sheets. So the first one is never be stuck for a story idea. And this has 7 different ways and just some tips on how you can create a story. And then the most important thing about your media release is your headline and your introduction. I'm going to give you 7 irresistible headline formulas on how you can create some great clickbait. So have a think about what you're missing. What is it about your marketing and your PR that you're not ticking off, if you have a plan at all. How can you make what you're doing more effective, more powerful? And look, if you need some help with direction, you need to know, understand where you're at, what you've done, where you want to go, what you need to get there, or you just need a bit of one-on-one guidance. I am offering a 15-minute discovery call. So if you go to my website, publicitygenie.com, there's a form there that you can fill in and we can have a 15-minute conversation about where you're stuck, and I can give you a few tips on how to move forward. We're at the end. What I really would like for you is for you to go forth and stand out. PR is a tool for you that enables you to rise above your competitors, because you just think about it, if you're not using PR and the people around you aren't using PR, can you imagine the power of you embracing that as a strategy to stand out from your competitors? It can make a huge difference to your business. So, my name's Annette Densham and I'm the Publicity Genie. Here's all the ways that you can contact me. I didn't put my web address on there, a bit blonde. I did a sleep study last night, so I didn't get much sleep. My web address is www.publicitygenie.com. My email is there, hello@publicitygenie.com. Join me on Facebook at Publicity Genie. I put heaps of free stuff up there, like lots of tips, interesting stuff that I find. There's always new things coming up. I'm going to do a webinar in a few weeks on how you can use podcasting and Periscope to raise your profile. So that should be really interesting. Check me out on Twitter. I'm all over the place. I'm doing my own PR. It's all good. Now, I also have a Facebook page called Grow Your Business. I would have sent you the link. If you'd like to hop on there, if you've got any questions, if you want to PM me at Annette Densham, if you're not my friend, let's be friends. PM me at Annette Densham. Ask any questions that you'd like. Really happy to have a chat with you and help you on your journey. Don't forget New Rules of PR in Brisbane, it's October 23, Melbourne, October 13, and Sydney, October 15. If you bring along a couple of friends, I'll give you your ticket for free. So that's got to be good. It's a full day event, so block it out in your calendar. Look, go and be famous and tell me how you go. If you never sit on another webinar with me again, or we don't do business, but what I've said to you today helps you in any way, share it with me. I'd really love to hear about your success. Have a great day.